our correspondent in Kyiv. Well, let's speak to Andrew Levi, a former senior British diplomat who was formerly posted in Moscow for many years during the early 2000s. Thank you for joining us here on BBC News. What do you make of the reaction coming out of Europe since yesterday's summit?
I think the reaction is one of concern, quite rightly, that a deal has been done behind the back of the Ukrainians to cede territory. And you've heard strong words from the German Chancellor and other leaders. There was a joint statement with Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, Ursula von der Leyen, and European Council President Costa today, saying that there should be no territorial concession without Ukrainian agreement. But that itself is suggesting that the US and Europe are looking at the possibility that Ukraine will have to cede territory. And that would be a terrible thing, given that the cession of territory would be because of a war of aggression launched by President Putin.
And there seems to be lots of reaction to what wasn't said. We're still in the same position. We still haven't got that deal.
Right. There's no ceasefire. Going to supposedly to a full-scale peace deal without a ceasefire simply means that the aggressors can carry on their aggression and carry on killing while any deal is negotiated. And I don't think it takes an expert at the art of the deal to understand that that is an extremely poor position to negotiate from if you are the victim of the aggression.
And let's talk about where this has left both sides, because they are in very different positions. Russia, of course, seeing yesterday's summit as a win, and now the stakes are high for President Zelensky ahead of those talks on Monday.
They're extremely high, and I think one thing that we need to remember, and I think President Trump really needs to get some expert advice. I mean, the reporting we're seeing is he's taking no expert advice on Russia, is that this is a long-term issue. Going back 30 years, Russia could have been a decent democracy, living in a neighborly fashion, prosperity for all. And the guys, these Siloviki, these hard men of the KGB, of which President Putin is one, decided to undermine that and take over. And they managed to do that when he took over the presidency at the end of 1999, beginning of 2000. And ever since then, and very clearly since the invasion of Georgia in 2008, he has been on an aggressive path, he and the narrow clique who run Russia, to take territory, take resources, and not to stop. And the only way to stop them is with massive deterrence. If there is a deal in which Ukraine cedes territory, although I hope does not legally recognize the cession of territory, and nobody else does, well, that would be awful, but the most awful thing would be if that were accompanied with a situation which left Ukraine insecure. So Ukraine needs to be a coherent, sovereign, independent, prospering state, and it needs to have massive deterrence against any further attack from Russia. Otherwise, that will come.
And very briefly, if you would, what do you think are going to be those key priorities when President Zelensky has that meeting on Monday with Mr. Trump?
The key priority for Mr. Trump seems to be to get a deal. And I'm really not sure quite what his strategy is there. One could have a longer discussion about that. The key priority for President Zelensky is to try to persuade President Trump that no cession of territory should be considered.
Andrew Levi, good to have you with us. Thank you for joining us here on BBC News.